Over the last year or so, I finally got around to trying my hand at what is the hardest kind of guitar playing to me, solo guitar. Now people may say, but Polyphia is harder, but Animals as Leaders is harder, and yeah, you're totally not wrong. The challenges in that kind of playing for me are like impossible shredding, making impossible grooves feel natural, and looking really, really cool. I'd say the first two in that list are primarily games of patience and long practice days. Looking really cool is obviously the hardest task. Why I think solo guitar is harder is because to me there's really just one objective. Don't be super boring. What's toughest about that is that boring is subjective. Some people would watch someone like Joe Pass play like they're a tightrope walker defying the odds, and other people would just go, jazz is boring. While I don't think it's a great idea to always cater to whatever's popular at the moment, or to radically compromise your vision to play whatever you think people want to hear, I think it's safe to say that playing in a way that at least entertains you is a good idea. So be entertaining while deciding whether or not to be every other instrument in the band. Do you add bass lines with some percussive elements while adding chord stabs while playing the melody? It's a lot to handle. I put a link in the description to a performance by Tommy Emmanuel where he builds a 4-piece band arrangement just with his guitar. I'd highly recommend you check it out. So don't be boring and possibly be a few instruments. Next, we're not only concerned about playing in time, but also when to play in time and when to play rubato or with free time. As weird as it sounds, free time has its own kind of pulse that you have to get good at as well. So now you're almost arranging and producing yourself in really subtle and musical ways. I remember when I was working on my arrangement around midnight, a teacher of mine said, hey, if you're going to start the song rubato, exaggerate it a little bit, otherwise it kind of just sounds like you have really loose time. And then when you go into the B section, do it a little faster than you'd think, just to really establish that the arrangement is in tempo now. Good points. Another good point came from another teacher of mine, Frank Potenza, who's an absolute monster of a player. I was working on my arrangement of Georgia on My Mind and playing in a way that I had more experience with, which is a Chet Atkinsy approach. He mentioned in the more traditional jazz approach that you wouldn't want to double notes in your chords, and they gave me these two chords to start the song with, which would be in F6 in root position and then in first inversion. To me, that really made a huge impact because those two chords Frank gave me made more use of the guitar neck in the way that I've been wanting to do but not knowing how. My method for that was just backwards. It turns out if I just sort of flipped the approach that I would use for a Chet Atkins style, I would end up with Frank's style. Instead of having a chord and building a melody off of it, I was going to play a melody and just harmonize it. I could still thump quarter notes if I wanted, kind of in that Chet Atkins way, just now the voicings were a bit more rich and the way of getting them was a little different. Sounds like a simple switch, and it is, but it drastically changes the feel of the arrangement. So far we have 3 big takeaways that influence my approach to solo guitar arrangements. 1. Be deliberate on what tempo you do or do not choose. 2. Build your harmony around your melody and not the other way around. And 3. Don't repeat notes in chord voicings unless you really want to. I had to add that unless you really want to for chords like this. These chords have a really interesting sound to me and have a lot of repeated notes. It's really just a power chord with a 9 on top, kind of like the one I saw Steve Vai do when I was growing up, but a bit fatter sounding, and it's 2 power chords and then a 9 as opposed to 1 power chord and then a 9. This chord is actually a cousin to another power chordish voicing I've been liking, which is 2 power chords, one from the root, one from the 9th, basically leaving you with a 1, 5, 9, 13. I really internalized the no repeated notes rule as just making every chord as interesting as you can to your taste. If you're feeling anxious about the whole harmonize the melody thing, I would encourage that you spend a few weeks with the cage system, a topic that is wildly covered on YouTube. For those that know that system a little bit, you could say that the first 2 chords that my teacher gave me for the Georgia on My Mind arrangement are F6 in the D position and F6 from the C position. If you're not familiar with the cage system, I can imagine that what I just said sounded super random, but trust me, just watch a handful of videos, download a few PDFs, and you'll get it in no time. There's 2 more things I really want to make sure to cover about solo guitar. When making an arrangement, I try to listen to as many versions as I can. For instance, before I tried my hand at Summer Over the Rainbow, I checked out Tommy Emmanuel, Ariana Powell, Pasquale Grasso, Jeff Beck, etc. Something in Tommy Emmanuel's version really stood out to me, and I decided to use it in my arrangement as well, which is switching the tempo in the B section to something that felt a bit more conducted. It's a very interesting sounding shift to me that I thought I could make my own. Conversely, when hearing Pasquale play the most intense version I've ever heard in my life, I was really impressed, but I didn't really hear anything that really resonated with me that I knew I could make my own. And for the last thing, we go back to harmony. Some of the chords at the end of my Summer Over the Rainbow arrangement get pretty out there. Since before I knew anything about music theory, I've enjoyed chord progressions that I learned later would be under the umbrella of non-functional harmony. Harmony that at its best sounds really neat and at its worst sounds pretty random. When there's a strong melody attached to chord progressions like this, I really like how it almost feels like a juggling act, like someone throw me another chord and I'll try to make it make sense. I happened on a lot of this harmony just by following my ear and not necessarily just relying on basic music theory for what is an acceptable functional chord to use. I highly encourage anyone making a solo arrangement to explore the sounds in their head, however strange or not strange. An example of not strange would be from my arrangement of Round Midnight, where there's a bunch of colorful chords that lead to an F-sharp major bar chord, the most simple chord ever, because my ear was just wanting a break from the more adventurous harmony. A lot of people I've talked to about solo guitar playing seemed a bit worried about not making a cool enough arrangement, an impressive enough arrangement, whatever, and I'd say just follow your ear, entertain yourself, and create a mood. Feel free to tag me in your posts, send me videos of your solo arrangements, or reach out for lessons. I always enjoy checking out new players. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see y'all next week.